Today we'll be listening to the words of Nasir El-Rufai, former Director General, BPE, former FCT Minister, former advisor to the government of Abubakar just before the 1999 handover. Today we'll be sharing his life history, his ups and downs, his great moments, and all that. I'm Obiora Ilo. Welcome, sir.
Pleased to meet you, Obiora, once again.
When you graduated from Bara College, you were tops. How did you feel on that day?
Well, Bara College is one of the greatest institutions of higher learning in this country. It has produced 4 or 5 out of Nigeria's 14 presidents, both military and civilian. And graduating from Bara College was indeed a great honor for me. I didn't think much of being graduating on top of the class. I mean, it was evident 2 years earlier that I was going to graduate well, because I was doing well in my subjects and classes. But it was a nice feeling. On that speech day, Usman Farouk, the governor of old northwestern state, was the guest of honor, and I won several prizes and won the academic achievement trophy for being the best all-round student. It was a good feeling, and one gets the feeling that the future is bright, because education was everything in those days. Once you have sound education, you are almost certain of a great future.
On that day, were you already seeing the bright stars? Was it like the beginning of what we saw many years after, I mean, culminating with you being a Minister of the Federal Republic and occupying a very, very important ministry?
No, I didn't think of that day in those lines. You know, while I was in Bara College, and this is one of my favorite stories, General Yakubu Gowon was head of state. 1972 was 50th anniversary of Bara College, and Yakubu Gowon was an old boy and a former head boy of the college. So he came for the graduation, for the anniversary. And shortly after, 2 years or 3 years after, he was overthrown in the palace coup and succeeded by yet another Bara old boy, General Murtala Mohammed of blessed memory. I remember what the principal said on that day. He said, well, I'm sorry to announce that Barewa number XYZ Yakubu Gowon has been overthrown in a military coup, but I'm also pleased to announce that he has been succeeded by another Barewa old boy. So, you know, Barewa had that environment of public service that you are constantly reminded that being in the college was a privilege. You are being trained to lead. But I never saw myself in the context of being a public leader. I saw myself as an academic at best. I was hoping that I would be a university lecturer or a professional in the private sector. I never in my life ever thought I would work for the government.
Okay, well, that's the story for, for later. You were born on the 16th of February, 1960.
That's what I was told.
That was what we were told. And 8 years later, you lost your father.
Yes.
What was growing up like, especially in the rural setting where you were born before you went to Kaduna?
It was tough. We were poor. My father was a pensioner. He was earning £3 a month as his pension. And we all had to help out in the farm. But everybody was poor then. There were a few people that were a little better off. So there wasn't much inequality. Growing up was difficult. When our father was alive, we used to walk 3 kilometers every day to the nearest primary school with my elder brother Bashir. That's how we got an education. In my second year of primary school, he died. And before he died, he said to me that you must take your education seriously. It's the key to your success in life. I remember that very clearly. And a few hours later, he died. So for me, that was something that was front and center all my life, to remember what my father said. But it was difficult, it was tough, but education was free. So even after my father died, I continued, we moved to Kaduna, I continued my education. In that rural setting, everyone was a farmer. Very few people were traders. Some went to Funtua and Katsina and bought kola nuts and other things and sold in the village. But life was simple, there was no crime. We all knew each other. We were all like one large family. I still remember growing up then, before I got into primary school, when Sir Ahmad Bello, the premier of the Northern Region, visited Daudawa, the village where I was born. Because in Daudawa, we used to have an annual agricultural show, an agricultural trade fair, and Ahmad Bello visited. And a few months later, he was assassinated in the 1966 coup. And I still remember vividly, there were only 4 Igbos living in Daudawa. And the community met and said that they should be protected. Their belongings, their things were put in a vehicle, they were driven to the border. And they all survived that period of crisis. So this was the village I was brought up. Everyone was one another's keeper. The only time I remembered there was crime in the village was when someone broke into someone's house and he was a visitor passing through the village that stole something, and he was arrested, and we all went to see him because of, you hear
it was novel.
It was novel. You hear about Barao means someone who is a thief, but you only read about it in storybooks. You've never seen one. So the day they said they have caught a thief, all of us in the village went to see how a thief looked like. And I still remember vividly, maybe because the man was beaten up thoroughly, his eyes were red. So I grew up thinking that anybody with red eyes, red bloodshot, must be a thief, So, this was the environment in the 60s where all, life was simple. Nobody was rich. Nobody in the village, apart from 2 or 3 agricultural officers, even had a car. A few had motorcycles. I think I remember those days with nostalgia.
Sure, it would be, hard work telling an 8-year-old boy, to share recollections of a father he barely knew. What little memories do you have of your father, and what impact did your father make in your life?
My father was an Islamic teacher. After retiring from the Ministry of Agriculture, he became the Imam of the mosque and was more or less operating as a cleric in the village. So that's what we grew up seeing. Our lives were full of religion, a lot of devotion to God and scholarship. That's what we grew up. I was very close to him. He took a liking for me, and he thought that I was going to be a successful person, providing I focused on my education. I think he saw my affinity for education very early in life. I learned to read and write before I got to school because I was curious by nature, and my brother Bashir taught me to read and write by the time I was 5. My father was buying Gaskiya Tafi Kobo every Monday for me, the weekly Hausa newspaper. So he was loving, he encouraged all of us. He had a large family, 3 wives, 15 children, but we all saw the burden on him. He was struggling all the time, but he took care of everyone.
Yeah, you were not close to your mother until after your father died.
Yes, I became close to my mother from the 3 months every year that I spent with her during the long vacation. That's when we got really close. And my mother was instrumental in shaping many of my ideas about life. She told us stories about prophets, about people growing up. In Hausa, we have this tradition of tatsuniya, where you give fictional stories that always have a message to teach things like honesty is the best policy. It doesn't pay to steal. It doesn't pay not to keep your promises. It doesn't pay to tell lies. You know, these are all embedded in some of these stories. And I spent a lot of time with her in those 3 months every year growing up, from the time I was 8 until I grew up. And we are still very close, because my mother had 6 children and I was her eldest son. She had 3 daughters and I came at the 4th, and so I was the eldest one. So she was particularly excited at my birth, because I was the first male son she had, and we became very close, and I learned a lot from her, and we are still very, very close. She lives in Kaduna and I visit her regularly.
I mean, at this time in your life, does your mother think you've been a success?
My mother is very proud of me. She thinks I've been a great success. And I think I've been okay, but my mother thinks the world of what I've been able to achieve in life is, of course, you know, she also suffered all the challenges I faced. I mean, when you read or you hear in the news that your son is a wanted man, your son has stolen this, has stolen that, it's quite a challenge. I think it is because my mother knows her son and how she brought me up, that she did not believe all the stories she had.
Okay, let's go back to Bara College. When did you leave primary school? And did you want to go to Bara, or was it by accident that you got there?
I left primary school in 1971. I didn't want to go to Bara College. I got admitted to Federal Government College, Sokoto, but my uncle felt it was too far away, and I had a very bad temperament. He thought I would not survive, because growing up I was I fought a lot. I was very temperamental person. So he thought that it was too far away, and my temperament did not lend to my being away from home. My first choice was Government College, Kaduna, because my best friend was there. But my cousin, Yahaya Hamza, who was Chief Education Officer in the North Central State Ministry of Education, who also went to Bara College, thought Bara was the college for me, and he changed it. I was admitted actually to Government College, Kaduna, because that was my first choice, and I did well in the common entrance and interviews. But he changed it and said, "You are going to Bara College, Zaria." I cried, I protested, but I went, because that was the system then. I mean, your parents took decisions for you. And Ayamza, who was my elder cousin, who was looking after me at the time, and who was the educational authority in the family, just ruled I was going to Bara, and I went to Bara College. And I remain forever grateful to him for that decision. I see him all the time, and I always thank him for taking the decision to send me to Bara, because all my enduring friendships, my business partners, my most interesting friendships and relationships all came from going to Bara College. So I'm happy I went to Bara, and I'm very proud of the fact that I went to Bara College.
So what are the striking memories of Bara College for you?
Well, you know, Bara taught me, Bara was the first time I was away from home. I went to boarding school, and in Bara College I learned hierarchy, I learned to be obedient, I learned to control my temper, because everyone was bigger than me anyway. I was the smallest guy in the class, and if I tried to fight everybody, I would just be beaten up every day.
Was that where you picked the nickname Giant?
Yes, that's where one of my seniors, Shuaibu Yakubu Charanchi, he was 2 years ahead of me, gave me that nickname. But he meant it in a pejorative way, you know, that I was small but quite talkative and aggressive. He said that, you know, this man has a small frame, but he has the mouth of a giant. That's how the name stuck. He meant to insult me, to say that I was the opposite of a giant. And the name stuck because people wanted to laugh at me, because I was the smallest in the class. As we grew up, some people said, oh, you know, he's called giant because he had a giant brain. That was not the truth. The truth was, I was given the name because I was small, and it is like looking at a dwarf and calling him a tall man. You know, that's how I got the name. But yeah, it stuck, and you know, Barewa was a wonderful, wonderful experience, and it is sad really that some of our public schools have broken down. But those public schools were the best training grounds, not only for building relationships, but leadership. It was in Bara College, for instance, that you know, I realized how large and diverse Nigeria is. I didn't know. I mean, I grew up mostly in Katsina and Kaduna states, monocultural, everybody spoke Hausa, you know, and so on. But Bara College had students not only from Kwara State, but from East Central State then, and Southeastern State. You know, so you know, it was immediately after the war, and there was a need to integrate, and Barewa took people from those states. Till today, one of my closest friends is Tunka Patrick Oga. He's from Ogoja in Cross River State. And Namdi Unwuba, who is a medical doctor living with his wife Chiedu in London, you know, went to Barewa College with me. We were in the same class. So from Barewa, we began to understand how rich and diverse Nigeria was, and that cross-cultural understanding, it was what has helped shape the way some of us think. And I think it's sad that we've lost some of that.
After Barewa, it was time to go to the university.
Yes.
Which choices did you make?
I made only one choice. I decided to go to Ahmadu Bello University.
Why?
Because I had made up my mind to study quantity surveying, and Ahmadu Bello University was the only university in the world that offered honors degrees in quantity surveying. At that time. So my choice was clear. I applied only to Ahmadu Bello University, and I got admitted.
Okay, I mean, the foundation for who you became, well, I could say started from that word of advice your dad gave you.
Yes.
When he was giving up.
Yes.
Education.
Yes.
And then you went to Barewa, you expanded your view, you knew how big Nigeria was.
Yes.
What did ABU do for you?
Ahmadu Bello University in those days, I don't know if it has changed, was not only the largest university in sub-Saharan Africa, but it was the most diverse. I remember then 70% of the professors from in Ahmadu Bello University, the lecturers, were all from what you now call Southeast, Southwest, and South-South. Okay, the student body was almost 60% from the south, 30% from the north, and 10% from outside Nigeria. So Ahmadu Bello University was not only a Nigerian melting pot, but an African melting pot. Many of the people that are important people in the South African government today were in Ahmadu Bello University. Many of them were sponsored to come and study there. Many students from Ghana and other African countries, from Sudan. One of my best friends is Babikar El-Sheikh. He was from Sudan. He studied electrical engineering and civil engineering at Ahmadu Bello University, and now works in Saudi Arabia. So Ahmadu Bello University opened our horizons widely. We began to sow not only Nigeria with its diversity, but the whole African continent with what it contained. But it also gave us confidence. You know, it showed us that, you know, we could compete anywhere in the world. You know, because we had people from every part of the world coming to do short courses in Ahmadu Bello University or joining us in class. A large percentage of my lecturers in quantity surveying were from Egypt and from the UK. You know, so you know, we had world-class education in a globalized environment. You know, unlike other universities that you go and see a large concentration of one part of the Nigeria or one ethnic group, Ahmadu Bello University had everyone and everything, and that really helped.
Why did you choose quantity surveying? I mean, you were talking about when people wanted to be lawyers, doctors. I mean, quantity surveying was like...
You see, I was very good in science subjects and mathematics. I loved mathematics. I was particularly good in chemistry. And my cousin, Yaya Hamza, thought I should study medicine. But I never envisaged a life in which I'll be going to the hospital and seeing sick people all the time. It was not the kind of life I wanted. And I told him I wasn't going to study medicine because I didn't quite like biology, though I got the biology prize. but I didn't like it. I preferred subjects with a lot of quantitative content. I liked mathematics. So, and the closest thing to mathematics in those days was either computer science, which Ahmad Bello had a good program in computer science, considered electrical engineering, and quantity surveying. Okay, these were the three courses that had a lot of mathematics content, but were professional. I needed to do a professional course because I needed to achieve financial independence pretty quickly. But at the end of the day, what decided for me was one of my mentors in Bara College. His name is Sani Mekudi. He was 3 years ahead of me in Barewa. He was my college brother. He looked after me when I came as a young student. And he mentored me. And he went to Ahmad Bello University and started studying pharmacy and then changed to quantity surveying. And I was visiting him and he told me about quantity surveying. There was a lot of mathematics content. There was some humanities content. And I found it interesting. And more than that, he said, look, with quantity surveying, you will achieve financial independence quickly. Because at that time, there were only about 20 quantity surveys in the whole of Nigeria. So it was a professional course in which there was scarcity of supply of the professionals. So there was a huge market. And Nigeria was doing a lot of construction. It was the oil boom. Quantity surveyors were in great demand. So these were the factors that came into play. And I chose quantity surveying. No regrets. I think quantity surveying actually laid the foundation for a lot of my future fit for the job in many of the jobs I did. Because you see, quantity surveying teaches you a little bit of engineering, a little bit of architecture, some economics, some law, and so on. So you get to touch so many things. You get to know a little bit of everything. And I think it prepared me to study business administration, which I did a few years after, and also law, because it arose my curiosities in these areas and helped prepare me for my future assignments, both in the public and private sectors.
When you left ABU, of course, you had graduated and qualified as a quantity surveyor. What happened?
I went for national service in Abeokuta, Ogun State. In those days, we didn't fix where we went for service. We allowed ourselves to be posted anywhere. Because my cousin Yaya by then had become a permanent secretary, I could have got him to call someone to post me to any state I wanted, but I wanted it to be a surprise because I wanted to know more of Nigeria. So I got posted to Ogun State. We did our orientation camp at Ayetoro Comprehensive Secondary School, and I got posted to a construction company called George Wimpy and Company, building the Oyan River Dam at that time. And I spent my 1 year there, completed my youth service, and learned a lot more about Nigeria. Because serving in Abeokuta, in Ogun State, and seeing that the challenges of the average Nigerian are the same. Whether you go north or south, east and west, they struggle daily with how to feed their families, how to send their children to school and pay hospital fees. And at that time, Abeokuta had no water in the taps. The flat that I stayed, I never saw water come out of the tap. Very much like some parts of Kaduna, my hometown. So I began to realize that Nigeria's problems are common. And all these differences in ethnicity, in religion, are just fictitious divisions. We have the same problems and we need to address them as a people. So I finished youth service. Before I finished youth service, I already had 3 job offers. I was offered a job by Fujirol to work at the Jeba Dam. Because I had worked as quantity surveyor on a dam project, I was qualified. I applied on the pages of newspapers and I got a job offer. New Nigeria Construction Company in Kaduna offered me a job, and a consulting quantity surveying firm that I did my industrial attachment earlier in school days also offered me a job to work in Kano. I chose to work in Kaduna because it was home and I just wanted to build my own network and relationships in Kaduna. I worked there for a while, 6 months to be precise, I decided it was best to start my own business. So I opened shop as a consulting quantity surveyor with 3 partners, but they were all working elsewhere. I was the first to come out and start. We started from 1 bedroom, and when we got 1 or 2 jobs, we bought our equipment and then moved to an office and so on and so on. So that's how we began the growth of El-Rufai and Partners, which still remains. I've not been to El-Rufai and Partners office since 1998. I've never worked there since then, but they take care of me. I'm still a large shareholder of the firm, and they pay me a substantial amount of money every year, and in fact subsidized me when I was working for the government. And the farm is still going on. Once in a while they bring me in when we are bidding for a job.
There was nothing democratic about UBJ.
The problem with the PDP over the years is imposition of unpopular candidates on the people, on the electorate.
This country's democracy will never improve unless those that don't fit are exposed.
If that banana peels was going to take anybody, it will take all of us, so that let people know what we are doing. It's not just saying transparency, transparency. People have to see.
Israel, they have their law, the law of the forest. It means the stronger animal has full right to kill and to eat the small animal.
If the insurgents continue the way it's going, that Jonathan will be the last president of Nigeria, because nobody will take this bombing everywhere.
Whether it's ISIS in Syria, whether it's Boko Haram in Nigeria, this is a mutual challenge that Nigeria is facing it, Israel is facing it, the international community is facing it.
Frontline, wherever the news is.
So at what point did you turn your back on your private business? At what point did you go to work for government?
In 1992, I think, or 91, I was asked to be Commissioner of Education in my state. And I declined because I've never had in my template to work for the government. And I declined because I thought Commissioner of Education for 1 or 2 states, for 1 or 2 years, because if you remember, Babangida was supposed to hand over in 1992. And Tanko Ayogo became governor in 1991. I just didn't see how being a commissioner for 1 year would make any difference. So my CV was asked for. I was recommended, someone recommended my name to Tanko Ayogo. He asked for my CV and I said, no, I'm not interested. But around 1996, I saw the way Nigeria was going. And I came to realize that unless you have a functioning government, unless those that are good and financially independent go into government, things will not work. Because all my life I thought I will work in the private sector, I will make money. If the taps don't give us water, I will drill my borehole and put my water treatment plant. If NEPA doesn't improve, I'll buy my generator. As long as I have money, I'll be able to form a small fence and protect myself from the failures of government. But by 1996, when Abacha was head of state, and one day I woke up, my wife and I had a car each, which we could afford because we were comfortable in the private sector, but we couldn't buy petrol. There was no petrol in the country. I then realized that I could not build my own refinery. If I have my own generator, I will need to buy diesel. I can't build a refinery to give me diesel. So there are certain things that must work for even the wealthiest person in the world in a country to enjoy his wealth. Another one that has emerged now is security. No matter how many guards you put in your own house, if a bomb explodes next to your house, you are gone. So, you know, that was what turned my thinking. And I decided internally in my mind that next time I have an opportunity to serve in government, I will go in and I'll give it my best, because the private sector cannot operate without a strong, functioning government.
At what point did you get that opportunity?
I got that opportunity when Abacha suddenly died. And General Abdul Salam Abubakar became head of state, and he invited me and gave me the opportunity to be one of a team of 6 policy advisors. A group was formed called PIMCO, Program Implementation and Monitoring Committee, of 6 people chaired by Malam Ibrahim Aliu, and I was one of the people invited to be that think tank. So we advised Abdul Salam Abubakar on the political as well as economic program. I did most of the work on the economy. I did a bit of work on the elections, organizing the elections and budgeting for the elections, and I was liaising with INEC and so on. We wrote a few speeches and so on and so forth. But that was my first opportunity. And when Abdul Salam made the offer, he said, come and work for 2 weeks, because he thought I won't come. But we ended up working for 11 months, and the elections were done, and we handed over, and we left. I thought that was it. I had done my bit. Alhamdulillah, we have a democracy. I have played a limited but substantial role, in my view, in making that happen. But in the course of the handover, I was asked to brief General Obasanjo, President-elect Obasanjo, then, on the economic program, which we had agreed with the IMF at the time. So I went to the IMF and World Bank team, along with other members of PIMCO, and I made the presentation and so on. That's when I first met Obasanjo. And we argued a lot. We disagreed on 2 things then, because when I told President-elect Obasanjo then, that this is what we have outlined at the privatization program, he said, I'm not going to privatize. I said, you won't privatize? He said, no, the military messed up everything. I will fix everything. Everything will work. We don't have to privatize. I said, General, you will have to privatize. So we had an argument. Everybody was, because nobody argued with Obasanjo. Everybody was, wow, who is this guy arguing with Obasanjo? And then we argued again about PTF. He said, I'm going to wind up PTF. I said, that's a mistake, because PTF was the only government agency doing anything in Nigeria at the time. I said, don't wind it up. Build up the capacity in the public service while winding down the activities. He said, no, it's unconstitutional. As soon as I take over, I'm winding it up. Well, Obasanjo got in, and he found some of the things I told him. So I think he remembered, because he got people to look for me. And that was how, from July 1999, my relationship with Obasanjo began. And he ended up making 2 job offers to me, which I declined. And then finally we agreed on... Well, the first thing Obasanjo wanted me to do was to be special assistant to the president on budget. And I told him that, Mr. President, thank you very much, but I am not interested in doing that. He said, why? I said, I don't want to assist or advise. I want to get my hands dirty. I want a real job. I want something that I will do myself, not advise or assist. I've been advising and assisting people all my life. I'm a quantity surveying consultant. I advise people how to spend their money. I don't want to advise. I have advised Abdul Salam. I have done that. I want something different. Then he called me and said he wanted me to be part of the team to wind up PTF. And I told him, I said, you remember I told you I disagree with your winding up PTF? He said, I said, I don't do things I don't believe. He said, I will announce your name. I said, well, if you do that, I will announce that I decline. So we laughed about it, But you see, by then it had become very clear to me that for some strange reason, Obasanjo really liked me. Maybe he liked the fact that I argued with him. Maybe no one argued with him then, and so on. But ultimately, Atiku Abubakar, as vice president, now sent a message to me that he wanted to see me. I was in Chicago. I was working for Motorola. He said he wanted to see me, so I came. I came to see him, but for 2 days I couldn't see him. So I called up President Obasanjo's principal secretary. I said, look, I'm in town. The VP has sent for me, but I have not been able to see him. I would like to see the president. Maybe he knows why the VP wanted to see me, because I've never had any interaction with Atiku before then. So I got an appointment to see Obasanjo. So I went to see Obasanjo. And I said, sir, VP sent for me, but I've been here 2 days, but it's difficult to see him. Do you know why he wants to see me? Obasanjo said, oh, yes. You are being offered the job of head of BPE. And this is a real job. So you go and do it and you know, get cracking. It's something you wanted to do. You are telling me about privatization anyway. So now you have a chance to do it. And said, you know, VP will get you, but that's the job. So I left. As I was going out, I saw the VP and his team coming. He said, I've been looking for you. I said, Mr. Vice President, I've been in town for 2 days. I have called your PS. He said I should hang on, stand by. He has not called me back. He said, okay, please go to my office and wait. So I went and saw him, and then he confirmed what Obasanjo had already told me and said, well, do you accept? I said, yes, I accept. It's something I would love to do. So he said, okay, we'll announce it. So I said, okay. And I left for Kaduna. It was after I left that the VP realized they don't know anything about me. They don't know how old I was. They don't know, you know, what I studied and so on and so forth. The only thing the VP knew or remembered about me was that in May, just before the handover, there was a conference in London hosted by Financial Times on Nigeria's debt, development and democracy. And I presented a paper on privatization. And it was, during the presentation, I announced that the decree had been signed into law by Abdul Salam and the Vice President was going to be the chairman of the Privatization Council. The VP didn't know up until then. It was the first time he had that he had a real job. Because, you know, Vice President has only one job in the Constitution. Chairman, National Economic Council, no other job. Every other job is what the President asks him to do. But this privatization law gave the Vice President a substantive job. So Atiku, I think, remembered that. Maybe that's why he looked for me to do the job. But so I left. Anyway, the next morning I read the papers. I left for Kaduna. I switched off my Note 9 Note. The next morning I read in the papers that, you know, I have been appointed the DG of BPE and that I was 43 years old and I was a lawyer, which I was not. I was 39 years old and I was a quantity surveyor. I was a law student, but not yet a lawyer. So anyway, 2 days later I reported as DG of BPE and started work and that was the beginning of my 8-9 years in the government.
Your time at the BPE was quite eventful. And if we want to talk all about it, we may not have enough time to do that. Tell me, summarize for me what you thought were first your very big challenges at BPE and what could you say were your achievements?
Well, I would say the biggest challenges were 2 or 3. The first was that privatization was almost a forgotten concept by the time I was appointed. Because the last time anything was privatized was 1992. Once Babangida stepped aside, privatization was frozen. Okay? So it was my duty to re-energize the program, to restaff the BPE, and to convince people that privatization was not just the transfer of assets from the government to the hands of a few, but something of benefit to all Nigerians. So I spent a lot of time explaining and so on and so forth. So that was a challenge, which I think we executed, we handled fairly well. The second challenge was the fact that the ministers, the politicians, the bureaucrats were against privatization because they would lose power. You know, these parastatals were gold mines for many. Of course, the Siemens scandal revealed what ministers of communication were doing in NITEL. Okay? And it's the same everywhere. If you go to NEPA, you will see the ministers of power dabbling into their finances and doing all kinds of stuff. If you go to Nigeria Airways, you see the ministers of aviation giving free tickets. So when you say you want to take these enterprises and make them private, the ministers will have no influence. The directors, the permanent secretaries will not be able to send notes. It's a big battle. I spent most of my time fighting those battles, which I think I did fairly well because I didn't care to be the DG of BP. I could walk anytime, so no minister was able to intimidate me. I fought everyone. And we quarreled with Obasanjo many times. So over came Achukwe, for instance, who he took sides with on Nigeria Airways. And of course, today Nigeria Airways is dead.
No matter how hard you tried,
yes,
no matter your achievements,
yes,
a lot of people felt that there was some corruption in the BPE, in the privatization process. And it has led to a lot of inquiries, a lot of suspicions. I want you to tell me sincerely, do you think that you did your best at BPE and that you were sincere. Like when the president called you and said, who did you sell to? That truthfully, you didn't know who you were selling to.
I knew, because you sell a company to a company, and the paperwork of that company reveals the owner. I'm not God. I don't know what is behind that. Okay? But each company we sold, we went through a bidding process. We gave everyone in Nigeria the opportunity to bid for the company.
Transcorp, for instance.
That happened after my time. Okay? When I was DG of BPE, every company sold was advertised. Those that express interest are shortlisted, evaluated. The bids are opened in public on live television, and the highest bid wins.
Was it true that Atiku bought most of the companies and his cronies?
As far as I know, Atiku did not buy any company. The only company that there was suspicion that Atiku may be associated with was AP, African Petroleum, which was bought by Sadiq Petroleum, Peter Okocha, who is a friend of Atiku's. Okay, now, the rules of privatization did not say that the friends of those in power should not buy. Okay? The rules disqualified staff of BPE and members of council from buying. It did not even stop the president from buying. Okay? Because he was not a member of council. But it disqualified members of council. The president is only disqualified from buying by the code of conduct requirements in the constitution. Okay?
The National Assembly investigations.
Yes.
Someone claimed he had received money on your behalf.
Yes.
Bribe.
Yes. And I dismissed him from service.
Was it because he collected bribe on your behalf?
BPE was an honest institution. Nobody in my time was doing that stuff. When Charles Osuji went to Mike Adenuga and collected 25 million and brought it, came to me and told me, I told him return his money to him. And I'll leave this matter, because Charles was one of my good staff. I said, go and return. Let this be between us. I know what you are trying to do. You are thinking of my best interest. This is Nigeria. You know, he gave a long speech about nobody will look after you, sir. You work very hard here. You don't have anything. I said, before I came here, did you know how I was feeding my family? Who asked you to do that? I said, Charles, go and return the money and I will forget you've told me this. He didn't. He came back to me a second time with $100,000. He said it is in the trunk of his car. I should go and just pick it. He went back to my Adenuga. I said, Charles, you are not listening. If you don't do what I have told you, I'm going to have to get you disciplined. He came back at that time and said, Atiku Abubakar knows about this, that Mike Adenuga told Atiku Abubakar. So I went, I said, okay, fine. I went and confronted Atiku. I said, you guys are telling us you are fighting corruption, where we should do things straight, and now this is what I've had. Atiku called Mike Adenuga and put him on speakerphone. And said, Mike, what did I tell you about Nasir? He said, you said I should not try to see him or give him anything. Atiku, so why did you? I'm sorry, sir. I just wanted to thank him. This is what happened. So Atiku said, I said, sir, we have to fire this guy. But he's a deputy director. I cannot fire him as DG. I have to bring it to the council. Atiku said, bring me the memo. We'll terminate his appointment right away. Because we can't accept this. That was not even what happened. We did that. But when we brought the matter to the council to ratify, because even the BP cannot sack a deputy director alone, the council on privatization has to ratify. When it came to the council, Attorney General Bola Ige said the termination was too light a punishment for what he did. He should be dismissed. And he was dismissed. That's what happened. Now, if I sent Charles to collect the money, why didn't I just collect it and keep quiet? Who would know? Who would know? And what is sad about this country is that Charles went to the Senate under oath, admitted to collecting a bribe, and he walked out of that place. In any civilized country, he would be handcuffed and because he has convicted himself. You take him to a judge and send him to prison. But he walked out because it's Nigeria and it's this Senate.
Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll look at how you accuse the Senate of asking for bribe. Two senators of asking for bribe, and then we look at other issues. Don't go away.
When television was invented, It was not only to entertain, but to tell stories of heroes on the pains of the weak. To reveal the big secrets and report the little things that matter. To unveil the complex issues and bring reports of events and personalities that shape our lives. Open your mind to true television with Frontline. Hot, incisive, in-depth, straight to the point. Frontline, wherever the news is.
BPE, controversial, challenging, and then you went to the FCT. How did that happen? When you left the BPE?
Well, you know, that was a bit of a surprise because you see, I quarreled a lot with Obasanjo in BPE. So I was shocked when he called me shortly after a quarrel over Nigeria Airways and Kema Chikwe, called me and said to me, after some preliminaries, that he was nominating me to the cabinet. I was shocked. But anyway, he did. And we went through Senate clearance and so on and so forth, and I reported at the FCT. And I spent nearly 4 years there.
But it was at FCT that you accused some senators of asking you for bribe.
Yes, Senator Ibrahim Mantu and Jonathan Zingina were the ones that asked me to pay them to ease my clearance at the Senate. And I came out and said so.
Why would you do that when other nominees were paying money to be cleared? Why were you going to be different? Were you playing to the gallery?
No, I wasn't playing to the gallery, but I just thought that this country's democracy will never improve unless those that don't fit are exposed. You know, I cannot get Mantu and Zingina arrested, but I could name and shame them.
They denied?
They would deny because nobody gets witnesses when asking for a bribe. But I was hoping that one of them would have the guts to sue me for libel because I have circumstantial evidence to show that they did. But you see, for me, what was very important was I saved future nominees from being asked. No ambassador that year was asked for money. And all other nominees thereafter, nobody asked them for money. But this thing was becoming a practice because two of my colleagues as ministers, who are both now governors, by the way, admitted to me that they were asked to pay, and one of them admitted to me that he had to pay. So that was when I realized, it was after we had become ministers, that I realized that honestly, when it happened, I thought they picked on me because I had running battles even with the National Assembly when I was in BP. I thought I was just being picked on. But then I realized that there was a pattern to it, and there was a need for Nigerians to know that their so-called distinguished senators were doing.
You know, from the point you came with the bribery and all that, your tenure for 4 years at the FCT was quite controversial. So many, you were known as Mr. Pull the houses down, Mr. Demolition, and what have you.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, are you a heartless person?
No.
Are you heartless?
No.
Why would you pull somebody's house down?
Because he broke the law, and that's the problem of this country. We mix sentiments with legality, and we'll never make progress unless we recognize that a society must have rules, and when these rules are broken, the justice should be blind. Whether you are rich or poor, whether you're big or small, the sanctions that are necessary to correct the wrongdoing are applied. That's what I did in FCT. People are telling me that, because someone is poor and he put up an illegal structure, I shouldn't take it down. So it is okay to bring down the house of a senator or inspector general of police or a minister, because I did that too. I brought down the house of the chairman of the ruling party because it was on water line. This is how I was brought up.
No, but the argument for some people was that some of these allocations were made by representatives of government. Yes. Maybe people that were in your position, the position you were now occupying.
Yes.
And for them, they were dealing with the government.
That is true.
So why would you punish them?
Two wrongs don't make a right, okay? The fact that the official was wrong and gave you allocation and you built a house that threatens public safety doesn't mean it shouldn't go down. Why
didn't you give them compensation?
We paid billions in compensation to such people. Before you qualify for compensation in FCT, you must have CFO. You must have approved building plans. Okay? Those that had those documents were paid. Ahmadu Ali was paid 20 million compensation. I am sorry. Under the Federal Capital Territory Act 1976, Land Use Act 1978, if you don't have title to land, whether you're rich or poor, you are breaking the law. And I have no sympathy, no apology for dealing with someone that breaks the law. As I said, this is the problem of this country. When the law is broken, sentiments kick in. And we'll never make progress unless we recognize that those that have responsibility for implementing the law must do so blindly. If there is something wrong with the law, go and change it. Those people that claim that before we came, you are allowed to build anywhere should go to the National Assembly and pass a law legalizing what they have done. Then I cannot do anything about it. But as executive, my job is to implement the law that is on the ground. And the law on the ground is the Federal Capital Territory Act, Section 7 and 14, and the Land Use Act. And that's what I did. And Abuja was the better for it. Abuja was the only city in Nigeria that became organized.
But they said your implementation was without a human face.
That is their opinion. That is their opinion. Anybody...
I mean, looking back now, do you think...
Look, anybody that breaks the law has no hiding place will claim human face and lack of human face. What face do I have? Look at me very well. Am I not human? I'm a quantity surveyor. I make living from building houses. Do you think I like demolition houses? My whole life is built around building houses. And I know that as a quantity surveyor and as a human being, building a home is the largest single investment of a human being. So I will allow it to stand because he has built a house but has broken the law. I will apply the law first and find a way to compensate him.
Did you compensate them?
We did.
Like giving them new plots?
We did everything.
Those that didn't have the title, those that didn't have the titles.
Those that did not have a title, we gave. We set up a whole new town called Pegi in Kuje Area Council, gave people plots. The people that we relocated from Idukarmo, we gave them plots. You know what they did? Most of them sold the plots. I'm saying this because you have to understand that all these sentimental approaches do not solve public policy problems. At the end of the day, what works is for people to look and see a very clear and predictable system of governance, not impunity. And the FCT was moving towards Lagos. We call the Lagosification of Abuja. And it had to be stopped, and we did it. And those that were abusing us then can see where Abuja is now, and they are telling us that we did the right thing.
What were the high points for you at the FCT?
For me,
beyond the controversies?
Look, you see, in this country, when people cannot say you're ignorant, they say you're arrogant. When you are doing your job, it's controversial. So that doesn't touch me in any way.
No, but talking seriously, are you not a controversial person?
I'm not. I'm not controversial. I have been given controversial jobs, but somebody has to do them.
And you had to do them controversially?
No, I have to do them the way they should be done. And this is the problem of this country. Look at the government you have. Look at the government you have. What are they doing? Nothing. Are you happy? They are not controversial.
Well,
because they are doing nothing.
We'll talk about the government, but what were your high points? I mean, looking back, what were your, what would you say were those great?
Look, for me,
yeah.
What needed to be done in Abuja was to restore order, to show that things can work, that Africans are not crazy people that revel in disorder. And we brought order to Abuja. The traffic flowed. We had a transportation system. We had a land registration system, which was the best in the country. We had street lights that worked. Traffic lights worked. Traffic flowed. We numbered houses such that you have even numbers on one side, odd numbers on the other. Abuja is the only city in Nigeria where you can locate an address easily. We brought order to this city. We made it work. We showed how things can work in Nigeria. We are not all anarchic, confused people.
Do you have regrets over the 4 years that you were in the FCT?
No regrets whatsoever, okay? Were there things I could have done differently? Of course. I'm a human being, and as you grow older, you learn all the time to improve.
Would you have been kinder if you were this old?
No. I was never unkind. I was as kind as I could be. But let me restate this. I have no sympathy for anyone that breaks the law. The law should take its full course. So if you are asking me kindness means I ignore the provisions of the law, sorry, you've come to the wrong person.
If you were told to write an epitaph, what will it be?
I would say I was an accidental public servant who got an opportunity to work for Nigeria and Nigerians and did his best. And posterity will judge.
Today, it's been in the words of Nasir El-Rufai, who believes in education, who believes in Nigeria, and who believes in God, and also believes that God will vindicate the just. Nasir El-Rufai, thanks for your time. I enjoyed this discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.